Welcome. Today, we're diving into ethical decision-making for leaders. This full-day workshop is designed to help you master yourself and, in turn, master leadership. Together, we'll explore how making the right choices shapes not just your success, but the impact you have on others. Let's get started. Today, we're diving into ethical decision-making for leaders, a topic as challenging and inspiring as climbing Mount Everest. Just like reaching the summit at 8,849 meters, making the right choices in leadership takes courage, clarity, and persistence. This journey, much like the first successful ascent by Edmund Hillary in 1953, is where every great story begins. Let's explore how we can navigate these heights together. Sir Edmund Hillary faced failure early on, but he didn't give up. He said, "I will come again and conquer you." His words remind us that mountains don't change, they stand firm. But we do. We grow, we learn, and we come back stronger. It's a powerful mindset, seeing challenges not as walls, but as opportunities to rise. That's the spirit driving this journey forward. Today, we're looking at ethical decision-making through the lens of 3 lessons from the mountain. First, we don't conquer mountains, we conquer ourselves. The mountain stays the same, but what changes is our preparation, discipline, and character. Second, unlike a mountain, people can grow in skill, judgment, and wisdom. And finally, every obstacle we face at work is climbable. We train for these challenges just like we would train to climb a mountain. Today, we're diving into ethical decision-making for leaders. This session, led by Dr. Krishna Athal, spans a full day and focuses on real dilemmas leaders face every day. We won't promise perfect answers, because there aren't any. Instead, we'll explore practical tools that help navigate these tough choices. It's about sharpening your judgment, not finding a one-size-fits-all solution. Let's see how this approach can make a difference. Before we dive in, let's set the stage with some ground rules for this workshop. These guidelines help us create a space where everyone feels safe and heard. We'll use I statements to own our thoughts, stay present with phones face down, and get straight to the point. Everyone gets to participate, no one dominates. We'll disagree respectfully, avoid judging, and focus on problems, not people. And remember, what's shared here stays here. This is how we build trust together. Now, we're shifting gears to a hands-on exercise about ethical decision-making for leaders. The question we're exploring is simple: what is the shape of leadership? You won't use words right away. Instead, you'll let your hands do the thinking. In small groups, you'll have 10 minutes to build your answer using the clay on your table. After that, each group will have 2 minutes to present what they created. This is about tapping into creativity and reflection, back to childhood, in a way. Leadership is a tricky word. It means something different to everyone. Every leader brings their own style, their own definition. But no matter how we define it, leadership boils down to one thing: decisions. Every choice a leader makes shapes the path forward. It's no surprise that when you search for leadership, millions of results pop up. The world just can't agree on what leadership really is, and maybe that's part of its power. When it comes to ethical decision-making, leaders have 3 classic styles to choose from. The mature leader understands all 3 and picks the right one for the moment. There's the hands-off, laissez-faire style, which works best when the team is expert and motivated, but fails if it's just an excuse to avoid leading. Then there's the directive, autocratic style, great for speed and clarity, but risky if it's the only approach. Finally, the collaborative, democratic style shines when buy-in and creativity matter, but it's not for emergencies. Knowing when to use each is key. Let's take a moment to reflect on leadership, the good and the bad. Think about the worst leader you've encountered. What qualities made them difficult? More importantly, what impact did that have on the people around them? Now, flip the script. Who was the best leader you've worked with? What did they do differently? This isn't just theory, it's about real experiences, real people. Let's use those examples to guide our discussion on what ethical leadership truly means. When it comes to ethical decision-making for leaders, disagreement isn't just allowed, it's necessary. If you can't speak up here, you won't speak up out there. We have to defend our disagreements, especially when the room pushes back. That means explaining why we don't agree, not just staying silent. Leadership often begins with challenging the status quo. So, take a moment, write down a leadership quote you actually disagree with. Dare to disagree. That's how new leaders emerge.
When we talk about ethical decision-making for leaders, a big question comes up. Are leaders born or made? You've probably heard people say things like, "He is a born leader," or "She is a natural leader." But is that really true? Today, we're going to explore this idea together. And I want you to think about where you stand. Do you believe leadership is something we're born with, or something we develop over time? Let's dive into this discussion. When it comes to ethical decision-making, our brains actually work in two very different ways. There's the fast system, automatic, emotional, running on habit. It's great for everyday tasks, but risky when we face tough dilemmas. Then there's the slow system, deliberate, rational, weighing principles and consequences carefully. The problem is, this slower thinking is lazy and tires easily. So it needs to be switched on consciously. Understanding these two speeds helps us make better, more ethical choices as leaders. Leadership often means standing in the middle of tough, no-win situations. Both sides can be right, and that's exactly why it hurts, and why leaders are so crucial. We wrestle with mercy versus justice, long-term versus short-term, community versus individual, loyalty versus truth. These aren't simple black or white decisions. They're the real tests. The right versus right dilemmas that live in the gray zone. That's where leadership shows its true colors.
We're looking at how ethical decision-making can unravel, especially for leaders. Sociologists call it the normalization of deviance, when small exceptions become the new normal. Leaders might say it's the moment they stopped paying attention. Newcomers see it and think, this is just how we do things. What starts as a tiny compromise, just this once, slowly turns into habit. No one plans to cross the line, but people drift toward it. This is how good people go wrong.
Now, we're facing 12 real dilemmas. The goal here isn't to find the perfect answer. It's to answer honestly. For each situation, think about what you'd do. And more importantly, why you choose that path. This is all about how we assess situations and make decisions when the stakes are real and the answers aren't clear-cut. Let's dive in and see how our decision-making holds up under pressure.
Let's dive into ethical decision-making for leaders with a real-world scenario. Imagine you're at a hotel conference center and you skipped breakfast. On your way to a meeting, you spot another company's event. There's a table loaded with food and drinks outside their room. But your meeting has nothing. So, what do? Do you help yourself? And more importantly, which ethical principle guides your choice? This case study challenges us to think about integrity and respect in everyday decisions. Let's dive into a tough spot many leaders face, ethical decision-making. Imagine your manager praises you for a great idea, even hinting at a promotion. But here's the catch, the idea wasn't yours. It came from a colleague. So, what do? Do you speak up and give credit where it's due? Or stay quiet and accept the praise? This case study challenges us to think about which principle guides our choice in moments like this. Let's explore a tough ethical dilemma leaders might face when abroad. Imagine you're invited to a feast, and the hosts offer you their prized delicacy, a sheep's eyeball. Refusing would be seen as a deep insult, but accepting challenges your own values. What would you do in that moment? And more importantly, which ethical principle guides your choice? This case study pushes us to think about respect, cultural sensitivity, and personal integrity, all at once. Ethical decision-making is one of the toughest challenges leaders face. Here's a scenario to consider. You've made a verbal agreement with a supplier, but before signing, a competitor offers the same deal for half the price. What would you do? And more importantly, which ethical principle guides your choice? This case study invites us to reflect on loyalty, fairness, and integrity, all critical values in leadership. Let's explore how these principles shape our decisions when the stakes are high.
Ethical decision-making is a daily challenge for leaders. Here's a simple scenario to consider. You find a colleague's pay slip left out in the staff room. It's tempting to take a quick look. But what do? And more importantly, which principle guides your choice? This case study invites us to reflect on respect, privacy, and integrity, the values that shape how we act when no one's watching. Ethical decision-making is rarely straightforward, especially when it involves people we work closely with. Here, we have a tricky situation. A team member is sending anonymous love letters as a prank, but the colleague receiving them is genuinely affected. The question is, do we step in and reveal the truth? And more importantly, which ethical principle guides that choice? This case study challenges us to think carefully about honesty, respect, and the impact of our actions as leaders.
Let's dive into a tough scenario that tests our ethical compass as leaders. Imagine you've just closed a major deal, and your director gives you a warm, lingering hug, one that makes you uncomfortable. What do? Do you speak up or stay silent? And more importantly, which ethical principle guides your response? This case study challenges us to think deeply about boundaries, respect, and courage in leadership. It's not always easy, but it's crucial. Ethical decision-making is rarely simple, especially when leadership and personal relationships collide. Imagine this. You're playing tennis with your director for the first time. You're winning, and you notice he's getting visibly upset. What do? Do you let him win to keep the peace, or do you play your best and stay true to fairness? This case study challenges us to think deeply about which ethical principle guides our choice in moments like these. Let's dive into a real ethical dilemma, one that tests our principles in everyday moments. Imagine you're at an airport lounge and spot an expensive pen just lying there, no one in sight. What do? Do you keep it, or do you try to find its owner? This case study challenges us to think deeply about which values guide our decisions when no one's watching. It's a simple question, but the answer reveals a lot about leadership and integrity. Let's dive into a tough scenario many leaders face. Your manager wants to know what a colleague has been saying behind his back, something unflattering. What do? Do you share it or keep it to yourself? And more importantly, which ethical principle guides your choice? This case study challenges us to think deeply about loyalty, honesty, and the responsibilities we hold as leaders. It's a moment where values really come into play.
Let's dive into a tough ethical dilemma every leader might face. Imagine your best friend is up for a job at your company. She asks you for the interview questions ahead of time. What would you do? Would you share them? And more importantly, which ethical principle guides your choice? This case study challenges us to think about fairness, loyalty, and integrity, and how we balance these values when making decisions that affect others. Ethical decision-making is rarely simple, especially for leaders. Imagine this. A supplier you're negotiating with sends an expensive personal gift to your home. Returning it might damage the relationship, but keeping it could cloud your judgment. What would you do? And more importantly, which principle guides your choice? This case study challenges us to think deeply about integrity, fairness, and the boundaries we set in professional relationships. It's a moment to reflect on where we draw the line.
For more than 2.5 millennia, thinkers have been wrestling with one big question. How do we know what the right thing is? Leaders often hear, "Do the right thing," but that's easier said than done. This slide introduces the real challenge at the heart of ethical decision-making, understanding what right truly means. Today, we're diving into a toolkit shaped by centuries of philosophy to help us navigate these tough choices.
When it comes to ethical decision-making for leaders, there are several key approaches we rely on. The utilitarian approach asks us to consider the greatest good for the greatest number. The rights approach focuses on respecting individual freedoms and entitlements. Justice and fairness remind us to treat people equally and fairly. The common good approach looks at what benefits the community as a whole. And the virtue approach emphasizes moral character and integrity. Together, these form a toolkit, a blend of practical and philosophical guides that help leaders navigate complex choices. when it comes to ethical decision-making for leaders. Two timeless questions guide us. First, Dr. Krishna Athal reminds us of Mahatma Gandhi's test of conscience. The idea that our inner sense of right and wrong is the highest court we answer to. Then, Immanuel Kant challenges us with the test of universality, asking, what if everyone acted this way? These two questions form the foundation of ethical leadership, helping us navigate complex choices with clarity and integrity. When leaders face tough choices, one common approach is utilitarianism. It focuses on outcomes, aiming for the greatest good for the greatest number. Sometimes, this means the method matters less than the result. But there's a blind spot here. While most may benefit, a minority might quietly bear the cost. The key idea is to weigh benefits against harms and choose the action that produces the best overall balance for everyone involved. This is just one of 5 ethical approaches we'll explore. When we talk about ethical decision-making for leaders, one key challenge is what happens when rights collide. The rights approach reminds us that each person has justified claims on others, like the right to freedom. But sometimes, honoring one person's rights can create tension with the needs of the majority. This approach draws on a long tradition, rooted in ideas about unalienable rights like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's a powerful lens, but it can't always break the tie when rights conflict. When we talk about ethical decision-making for leaders, it's important to recognize a common blind spot. Treating everyone equally isn't always the same as treating them fairly. Justice asks what's right in general, while fairness looks at what's right in each specific situation. As a leader at Exotic, your challenge is to build a culture that balances both, giving each person what they truly deserve. This slide introduces the justice and fairness approach, one of 5 key ways to think about ethics in leadership.
Now, we're turning our attention to ethical decision-making for leaders. This part is crucial, because leadership isn't just about strategy or results. It's about making choices that reflect integrity and responsibility. Dr. Krishna Athal brings valuable insights here, helping us understand how leaders can navigate complex situations with ethics at the forefront. Let's explore how these principles guide not just what leaders do, but who they are.
Now, we're focusing on ethical decision-making for leaders, a crucial skill in today's complex world. This section, brought to us by Dr. Krishna Athal and the Exotic Group, explores how leaders can navigate tough choices with integrity and responsibility. It's about more than just rules. It's about values, trust, and the impact decisions have on people and organizations. Let's dive into what it takes to lead ethically, even when the path isn't clear.
When we talk about ethical decision-making for leaders, one tricky question comes up. Where does treating everyone the same actually end up being unfair? It's the difference between equality and equity. Equality means giving everyone the same thing, no matter where they start. Equity means giving each person what they need to reach the same starting line. Think of it this way: equality is handing out the same pair of shoes to everyone. Equity is making sure those shoes actually fit. So, do you still believe in equality? That's the harder question we need to ask. When we talk about ethical decision-making for leaders, one big challenge is the common good. It's a phrase we hear a lot, easy to say, but tough to pin down. Someone still has to make the call. The systems and institutions we rely on should serve everyone, not just a few. John Rawls gave this a modern spin, focusing on conditions that benefit all. But this idea isn't new. It goes back to Plato, Aristotle, and Cicero. This is what we call the common good approach.
When we talk about ethical decision-making for leaders, one powerful way to look at it is through the virtue approach. Instead of asking what actions we should take, this approach asks a deeper question. What kind of person should I be? It focuses on virtues, qualities like honesty, courage, compassion, and integrity. These aren't just traits, but attitudes that shape consistent, moral behavior. So, leadership grounded in virtue means acting naturally in line with these principles, day in and day out.
When tough calls come fast, leaders need quick ways to check their choices. Here are 3 simple tests, each just 10 seconds long. First, the sleep test. Will this decision let me rest easy tonight? Next, the mirror test. Can I look at myself tomorrow and still respect who I see? And finally, the front page test. Would I be okay if this showed up in tomorrow's newspaper? If any of these fail, it's time to pause and think before moving forward. When faced with tough choices, ethical leaders ask 5 key questions. First, which option will do the most good and cause the least harm? Then, which respects the rights of everyone involved? Next, which treats people fairly, either equally or in proportion? After that, which serves the whole community, not just a few? And finally, which option aligns with the kind of person I want to be? These questions guide us through any dilemma, helping us act with integrity and care. When leaders face tough choices, asking the right questions can guide them to act with integrity. We start with the utilitarian approach, which option creates the most good and the least harm. Then, the rights approach, does it respect everyone's rights? Next, the justice and fairness approach, are people treated equally or fairly? The common good approach asks, what benefits the whole community? And finally, the virtue approach, which choice aligns with the person I want to be? These 5 questions help us lead ethically, every time. Let's wrap up with a powerful exercise. Keep your leadership code somewhere you'll see it every day, because out of sight means out of mind. Think of one sentence you want your team to say about you a year from now. Identify one behavior you'll change starting tomorrow morning. Choose 3 values you won't trade, no matter the pressure. Write it all down on one page in your own hand. This is the leader you're choosing to be at Exotic.
Thank you all for being such wonderful participants today. It's been a privilege to share this time with you. Remember, as John Wooden said, true character shows when no one's watching. If you want to stay connected, you can find me on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn, or visit drkrishnathal.com. Now, let's open the floor for your questions.
This video was created with SlideSpeak. Visit SlideSpeak to turn your presentations into engaging AI-narrated videos.